Good morning. It is Sunday, not just any Sunday. Today is the 20th anniversary of Katrina. Now, I used to live in New Orleans. I can tell you that that storm broke the hearts and minds of not just the people there, but millions around the world. And so my heart goes out to New Orleans, still in recovery 20 years later. We'll talk about that and a whole bunch of other things as we get into the nitty gritty of what the heck is going on in the cannabis industry here on the rotation. Hit it. Just so you know, I did Google Earth my house that I used to live in New Orleans. It is now a field. So I guess it didn't make it. But I was there just before the storm. I actually went with the Centers for Disease Control to check out the damage afterwards. And it looked like a moonscape over there. It was actually worse than it was when I went to help out with Andrew. So, and Andrew was held. Did you ever see what happened to the homestead, Mike? After Andrew, it was just devastated.
Yeah, I was before I was down in Florida, so
that whole area was wiped clean. Of course, there were a lot of like 3-walled houses in Homestead with a lot of people working in the agricultural industry.
We had moved from Kendall to Fort Lauderdale like maybe a week before Andrew actually hit, and our old house was like basically demolished when our new house, like we had like a branch that fell over.
Wow.
So that worked out pretty well. I remember being 8 years old and being in that storm.
Yeah, I was a little bit older. I was working at sexually transmitted diseases in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And they sent me over to help out with the cleanup on Andrew, and it was just absolutely devastating. But Katrina was even worse, if you can even believe that. But let's get into the business. All right. Let's start with the introductions. My name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director here for Suncoast Normal and our master of public health. Yeah, I worked out on time this time.
Yeah.
Now, what is missing from our menage today is our executive director, Christopher Cano, who is dealing with things over in Anne Arundel County in Maryland and hitting him below the beltway, even though he's above the beltway. But we do have our deputy director and our master of business administration and the proprietor of Chillum, Carlos Jose Angel Armida.
Crowd loves me.
And our official pseudo-Cuban. And we have two very special guests. Of course, one is a repeat offender who has been on our show many times, who has now been listed at. I'm very happy to say this because I got my Superman can here of tea. Where he is. There he is. Now, our Superman, as far as defense attorneys here in the state of Florida, now officially best of Florida. What is the new award you got?
Yeah, best of Florida 2025 criminal defense attorney.
So don't mess with him, Michael C. Minardi.
That's right.
And one of his clients and somebody who's deep in our heart here. We have Danny Jones, who is the proprietor of Smokey Jones, who is one of the premier, because Chillum is the other one, of course, smoke shops here in the state of Florida. I got to tell you, smoke shops continue to thrive. Smoke shops continue to thrive here in Florida. In fact, I live out in the boonies here in Hernando County. We now have 3 smoke shops. 2 of them are named Insane Smoke Shop, and 3 dollar stores, Dollar Generals. That's about it. But it's interesting that the smoke shops are still catching up, and yet they are constantly under fire by the good folks in Tallahassee who are trying to do everything they can to mess with that particular business. Now, other states, like I just came back from Michigan, you don't see very many smoke shops because they have adult use recreational cannabis, and so therefore that particular market was allowed to move into the other market. But here in Florida, we still have a situation where you have the MMTC oligopoly, and we have the hemp industry. And Mike, quick turn. What has the state of Florida been doing to the hemp industry?
State of Florida has continued to kind of restrict and limit what it can do over the years. It tries to, at least. And if the legislature doesn't do it, the Florida Department of Agriculture is trying to do it. And if the Florida Department of Agriculture doesn't do it, then now we have police coming into hemp stores and arresting people on seemingly a regular and consistent basis right now.
And Danny, this happened to you. You were just sitting there chilling one day, and all of a sudden you had a knock on your door, and I don't know if they had masks on or not, but they raided the place. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what happened. As far as masks, yes, they did have masks on. They just showed up one day with a search warrant, came in, took a bunch of property, arrested my employees, and here we are.
They arrested your employees. Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right. So no offense to Gary. I love all the intros that you do, but I just want to break in here and talk about Danny and his smoke shop and how important his smoke shop actually is. Believe it or not, you started, when did you start? You started 2018, 2017?
2017.
2017. Chillum started in 2018. So I remember the idea of opening my store, and you go around to other smoke shops and you check out what's going on. And I walked into Danny's place, and this was the first time that I saw hemp flower. Right, it was CBD flower at the time. It was really only known as CBD flower. It was those TKO jars that everybody used to sell back in the day.
Yeah.
And I remember
black jar.
Yeah, I remember pointing at it in his case and being like, "What the hell is that?" and his wife was there working the counter and was kind enough to explain to me in such a way that I understood. And it's important to point out that Smokey Jones is an innovative company. Smokey Jones was doing stuff before I was doing it. Smokey Jones was at the forefront of representing this culture in an amazing way here in Tampa. And on top of that, right, the marketing that this gentleman does is unbelievable, right? There's celebrities coming in and out of his shop, doing appearances at his shop. There's billboards. There's a bunch of he's on social media quite often. Apparently his social media is in jeopardy right now. But
overnight we found out.
This gentleman works very, very hard, to do things the right way, right? You're one of the first people to actually be licensed to sell hemp flower in the state, right? And now it seems like your business is under attack, and goddamn AI cameras. There we go. So now it seems your business is under attack, right? And we did this whole thing. Mike actually came on when we did the press conference for you, and you started your trial and everything like that. And of course, we have Mike on today because Mike is your attorney. We don't want you out here saying anything that's wrong or is going to be harmful to your case or anything like that. But when we had Mike on last time, he talked about what happened to you. Talked about the fact that you're going through this because you're carrying THCA flower, and then I think it was like a week ago, Mike posted a message in one of the group chats that I'm in about people getting arrested in the state.
Right.
So it seems to be this like crackdown, not just on THCA retailers,
on hemp in general,
but hemp in general.
Yes.
Right. So
CBD too.
Yes.
So
So I think it's important. First, I really want Danny to talk about what happened to him, kind of go into as much detail as Mike will let you, to what's going on with you, where you're at in your case, things that are fucked up or things that are okay. What just really go into what's going on. And then maybe Mike, maybe you can come in and kind of take the reins and talk about in general what's happening now as far as the hemp industry is concerned in Florida?
Yeah.
All right.
I think because you brought it up, I think I need to take it back to where we started and why we started. Which takes me back to 2017, which I mean, hemp wasn't even, a thought in our head. We didn't even know it was going to happen,
Mhm.
but we did get our license, obviously. I think it was 2019 or as soon as we were able to.
Mhm.
And we wanted to make sure that we opened the doors the right way for other people, that we set examples for other people.
Mhm.
And that's what we've been doing from day one. So 2017 we opened, 2019, 2020, hemp started flourishing in Florida. We went to all kind of meetings. We were a part of the University of Florida hemp pilot program when that first initiated.
Oh, wow.
We were going around to, all the agriculture meetings, Nikki Fried, and, and the market bloomed, and we expected it to. But it took people like us, me, you, guys in the industry, hemp industry, not the medical marijuana industry. It's the smoke shops, the hemp, dispensaries and places like that. That's who, blossomed this whole industry. And then, like you said, the CBD flower, we started with CBD flower. Then it went to Delta 8, you started having different cannabinoids added to the flower. It went to HHC, Delta 10. It just worked its way up.
And maybe it'd be a good idea. I think the people that watch this show would understand what hemp flower actually is. But to this day, I still get people in here that don't understand the difference between hemp and cannabis. Maybe you can enlighten real quick.
Well, I think the average human being doesn't know what hemp is. And when you defined hemp, I mean, there's so many different definitions out there. But when you define hemp, it's cannabis sativa L with it don't matter what isomer is inside of it, as long as it's under 0.3% Delta 9 THC. That's the definition of hemp. Anything over Delta 9, 0.3% is going to be considered marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does anybody remember how we got this definition in the first place? It really was arbitrary, wasn't it?
It's totally arbitrary.
I think it was a Canadian researcher who was just pressured to get a definition for hemp. And so in his back pocket, he pulled out a piece of paper and just scribbled 3%, and that was it. There wasn't any scientific evidence or anything biological to actually declare what exactly was hemp and what wasn't hemp. And they decided to go ahead and move along with this in the 2018 Farm Act to go ahead and define hemp for the state. And I think isn't that really pretty much the crux of the problem?
That's a start of it. I at this point towards the testing of law enforcement. They don't understand. I still haven't even been able to get an answer from the Hillsborough County Prosecutor's Office as to what cannabinoids, THC molecules do they consider legal? Just no response at all. And so I really think it's a testing issue and an ignorance issue on behalf of law enforcement to be gung-ho. Realize these law enforcement agencies, all they have to do if they suspect anyone of selling illegal products is call the Florida Department of Agriculture and tell them to go out and do an inspection. This problem is compounded by our current Commissioner of Agriculture and his removal from anywhere on the Florida Department of Agriculture website to look up businesses that are hemp or smoke shops that are legally allowed to sell hemp. It does not exist on their website anymore. I couldn't find it after searching and searching and searching. You can find cultivation licenses, but you cannot find hemp food establishment licenses. So law enforcement goes and looks them up. They see a tobacco license. They may see another license, a business license, and occupational licenses, but they're not seeing licenses that these people can sell these products either. So it's a really serious problem.
Now, they were worried about hemp entering the marketplace at the very beginning. So I went to Tallahassee and I gave Holly an opportunity to put together a program that would help them test products so they would have more consumer confidence. It was basically a randomized testing that would basically go from store to store and try to find out who the manufacturer was, as opposed to going after the solicitor, going after the retail shop. Because at that point in time, their whole goal was to let's attack the retailers. But the problem is the retailers don't create the product. They buy the product with the understanding and trust that it is safe and potent and it is under 0.3% THC, which can change, by the way, if you just put it in a hot back room. If you keep it in the room without the air conditioning on, it will oxidize and become decarboxylate rather, and become more delta 9 THC. So you have to store it properly. But at that point in time, that's the onus on the retailer. But I had suggested let's do it this way, so we could do a web, we could do a secret shopper program, and we could find out who is manufacturing the products which should not be there, so you don't affect the retailers, because the retailers were starting to grow at that point in time, and they rejected that.
This was that's the thing about this particular situation, is that this is really the first time law enforcement got involved going after a retailer, right?
Versus FDACs.
I've had issues with FDACs in the past. They come in, they put their red tape on a product, they make you put it off to the side. I've had flour that's been red taped. I've had, mushrooms that have had stop sales on it. And they come in and they do that, and I don't know of any cases in the past, but my assumption is that law enforcement would then go check with FDACs to make right, like they would the attorneys.
I will mention, I never had red tape on any flour by FDACs. I'd never had mushroom, flour, any of that red tag.
And you were inspected regularly?
No, to find out that I haven't had an inspection in over 4 years when this happened.
Wow.
I didn't know that because the other store is having them, and I don't know which one. I just know I'm having them, and I'm not keeping up with their job. I'm just making sure that, I'm following all the rules and regulations.
All right. So Danny, can you do me a favor? How did this whole thing happen?
That's very interesting.
Okay.
I want to know that. So if you can figure that out, please send it my way. If any of you guys know that, please let me know. I'm open up to suggestions on that.
All right.
Mike's been pretty heavily involved in this, but I know that one of the first people that was attacked was Alex Petrick's shop over in Tallahassee, where Tallahassee Police Department knocked on his door and started taking stuff away and taking all the stuff that was ready for shipment.
I realize
that.
Yeah, that was pre-2018 Farm Bill. So we were dealing with a totally different landscape at that point. I had to go in and say, well, but the Farm Bill provides for research on marketing. This is what the federal government and everyone has said is marketing, is shipping it and selling it across states' lines, because that's what marketing is. So those were a little bit different scenarios. Those were pre-2018 Farm Bill. We had two of those. Again, it's pounding your head against the wall. They do not want this plant under any circumstances, legal or look like legal or anything look like it, to be able to be used by people. And they will criminalize it in every aspect that they can. And it's sad. It's a plant.
Whoever wants to answer this question, whether Danny or Mike, right? Can you just kind of take me how did the raid go down? What were you thinking in the when the press conference happened, when you were out in court? Where are we at now with the case? What are the answers to all these questions? What's happening right now?
First, let's take it back, because you asked the question, and I don't feel, I want to know from other people, but at the same time, you said it best. My advertising practices, I think, is what got me here. Okay. Those big billboards, around the city that says it's always 420.
Mhm.
and has my logo, and that's all it has, I think it got some attention.
Okay.
You know, so and by the way, it's always 420 at Smokey Jones. So shout out to Smokey Jones. Besides that, like you said, the Instagram, bringing different people in and things like that. But that's probably what it is. Now, speed it up to, you know, far as the raid goes, you know, I wasn't there that, you know, that day. I actually was I was remodeling my mother-in-law's house. And I got a call, and I looked in my cameras just in time to see an officer turn my cameras off. So I didn't see anything else what was going on. So a few days later, I show up to my store, and it's tore up. It's ransacked, all to hell. Me and my wife and a few people, we picked it all up. We got it together. We got the store back open as soon as possible so we could, you know, recoup as much of $250,000 in product that we could, so we could still pay rent and everyone that we owe money to, including Mike. We had to get a lawyer, you know. So times has been tough. It's been hard, and I think it's designed to shut us down, but we're stronger than that. We're gonna come back. We're still coming back. To my case, we're not anywhere, to be honest with you. I think we're the same place as when we started. So you guys know as just as much as we do. Me and Mike, we've been doing our research. I think we're a lot more intelligent now than we were prior to this, and we're gonna win. That's the main thing. We're gonna win.
I worked with the health department for a number of years, and if you don't go by all the rules and regulations, they shut you down. They don't just cripple you and take your product away. They close the shop, but they didn't close your shop. They just took the product, or they destroyed the product. What did they do with it?
Actually, that's interesting. I even asked Mike on this because one of my charges is actually I'm a nuisance here in Tampa, and that hits me pretty hard just because I give so much back to the community. I love the city, and you know, we build our brands here for a reason.
There's a charge for being a nuisance.
Yeah.
Well, here's to all the nuisances. I would toast to that, or you can toke to that.
There you go. We'll talk to
Toast and toke to it.
but yeah, that's it blew my mind, you know, hearing something like that. That's and we got a letter actually from the police department. I forwarded to Mike. He read it. You know, so claiming if we or continue to be a nuisance, that they will close us down. So like you said, we would. But back to your question, it's funny because I asked Mike the same thing. Well, you know, why didn't they close me down? And he says, well, they took the nuisance away. Well, if you took the nuisance away, you wouldn't leave half the nuisance. You would take all the nuisance. So it was, you know, so they left, you know, a bunch of product of the same ones because I have inventory, and, you know, it was weird how they did it. But at the end of the day, they still left a nuisance, you know, but I wasn't closed down. So the whole case has been just that, confusing.
Yeah, so just a few things there. So their nuisance is the alleged illegal items, right? So, which obviously our position is that there was never any illegal items. And it continues to come back to their testing. Their testing does not differentiate the different types of THC molecules when it comes to a result. That's both their roadside testing and their Florida Department of Law Enforcement testing. It uses a gas chromatography. So it really creates a lot of confusion for them. And this is the one situation where it seems like ignorance of facts or science is a defense for law enforcement and prosecutions for going forward on these types of issues, because, you know, they're just getting away with lying blatantly, saying that these products clearly test for over 0.3%, you know, the roadside test. They test a ratio of CBD to THC. Ironically, in Danny's case, they have new tests that they used a year ago that I was jumping up and down challenging, saying that their tests were ridiculous and they were not accurate, especially for testing products like Delta 8 and THCA. And they got a new test that and the advertising for the new test says the old test was bad. This one's way better than that one. So, you know, we're dealing with fake science and, misconceptions and honestly ignorance of the law and really the regulations, both federally and on the state level.
Well, I know that right now, in the case of immigration, due process seems to be thrown out of the window. Is there due process here in regards to this, or did they basically arrest first and then look to see if the charges would stick later?
Well, again, from their perspective, and they always arrest first, and it's up to the state attorney's office and the courts to see whether or not the charges stick. But and I can understand, if you are have no clue what your testing equipment does, and you're told that it only shows positive if it's illegal cannabis versus any other hemp substance, then you're going to 100% wholeheartedly believe that these people must have illegal substances. Problem is when they can't talk about the different types of molecules, where they can't even understand that there are legal tetrahydrocannabinol THC molecules and regulated THC molecules, right? Delta 9 is regulated, THCO, THCP, Delta 8, Delta 10 are all legal THC molecules. And, they can't get their head around that.
I guess the question I have is where do we go from here? Where is the case at this point in time? And Danny, I want to know, what have you been doing since raid day?
So on our side, we're still, it's really only been a month or so since we've been in court. We just got all the evidence. I'm trying to set depositions down immediately. I'm trying to go and view all the evidence immediately so I can know exactly what I know is potentially even going to test hot if the lab versus not, and then try to get all those property back as soon as possible and move forward. Unfortunately, we have an employee that was arrested in this case, is in custody right now. And, these types of things affect people. In another case I have, they arrested 6 employees, and if you say this stuff is good, or, yeah, this is beautiful, or it smells great, or anything like that, they're like, oh, they knew it was illegal. It's just absolute absurdity that any of these store owners are going to be, spending money on rent, spending money on advertising, buy $200,000 worth of products and be like slinging illegal products, out of their front door, paying taxes on it. Like it's just so illogical. And just these cops are just so gung ho on making a criminal out of everybody instead of, and this is my biggest issue with this case from the beginning. From the day that it was raided, I was in touch with the city attorney trying to say, listen, let's sit down and have a conversation about this and everyone get educated so we know really what's going on. And I've tried to do this with the state attorney's office as well. But it's like, banging your head on a wall and they're just like, oh, well, FDLE labs are DEA certified. So no matter what they say, it's correct. And your results, which actually categorize each different cannabinoid and the percentage of each different cannabinoid mean nothing to us, because our results would just show test for 1% or under. That's it. Out of all THC molecules is better than your test. That's the standard in the hemp industry. That's the ignorance and idiocracy I'm dealing with right now.
So the lady who took over for Andy Warren, Susan,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, is she the basic sticking point in regards to this case right now?
It's their office's position on the issue. In my perspective, I have the prosecutor on and there's a supervisor on, and I'm emailing them all this information, and they just don't care. They're not even willing to talk about it.
What has been the reaction from FDAX in regards to this? And our good friend Welton Simpson, Mr. Personality, who I understand is running for governor. Good luck on that one.
My understanding is he's not running for governor. But
Good.
They don't take a position on it. At this point, their position is as the THCA issue is being challenged administratively up at the 5th District Court of Appeal. As we know, our legislature the past couple of years has tried to actually include THCA into the definition of hemp for testing in Delta 9, and it has failed. DeSantis vetoed it, and it didn't go nowhere and didn't even pass this legislative session this year. So it's really, FDAX has nothing to do with it. FDAC deals with administrative. They have not been involved in this case at all. I'm assuming that law enforcement never, ever contacted them. And this is one of the things that we are working on a civil lawsuit for Mr. Jones, trying to get an injunction against law enforcement, because it's my position that both under the federal and the Florida Farm Bill, the Florida Department of Agriculture is the main enforcement agency for hemp licensed companies, and that they are the ones that have to provide or feel that this person was doing something non-negligently before they refer them to law enforcement. There's a provision specifically that seems to be clearly ignored that says, the negligent use or negligent possession, et cetera, isn't subject to any civil liability, criminal liability by any local, state law enforcement. So that's something that we're trying to bring to the limelight. So I think this Commissioner of Agriculture should be standing up and say, hey, listen, let us deal with this first. And then if it needs to be referred to prosecution, we'll do so. And we know that because even other stores that have gotten stop sales, and I did a public records request to the Florida Department of Agriculture, it's my understanding that 0 have ever been referred to prosecution by the Florida Department of Agriculture. So why does the law enforcement get to go in and rob someone of all their products, treat them like criminals, when in a situation like Carlos's or others, they went and did a stop sale on it, or people paid a fine and it was over with. You don't sell it again. And these are, again, state issues, because the Florida legislature and our the Florida Department of Agriculture, especially with the child packaging issues, are deciding to interpret things that have not been established in law by the legislature. And I think there's a problem with that.
Now, a stop sale, is that similar to a cease and desist? And that
Yeah.
it's a warning as opposed to an actual stop? Because I know they go in there, they put these stupid red tags on, and they
Yep.
put everything into boxes, and they close it up and put a red tag on top, like they do to your water meter when your water shut off, kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's not actually an arrest,
Not even close.
correct?
And so what happens is, technically, when FDAX comes out and they issue a stop sale on products for any reason, right, whether or not it be packaging or the testing results or anything of that nature, and sits in a red box, you technically have 21 days to file and request an administrative hearing to challenge, right, the department's actions, right? And that's kind of what's going on right now with the 5th District Court of Appeal. Ours is on stay right now with Mr. Jones, because we have challenged all those products. So you do have an administrative process like you would with any licensing, by challenging the Department of Agriculture through that process. So you can absolutely challenge it and then fight it and either pay a fine or get it reduced, and or maybe you win, like some of these packaging laws where they're saying, well, it's not just in a shape of a human, it's anything that has a picture or resemblance or anything with a human on it, we're considering as non-compliant for the child packaging laws. So, these are things that we get to challenge, and even whether or not they can turn around and say THCA is a non-compliant hemp product in Florida without our legislature doing so. These are all things that are being challenged administratively currently.
So is this preemptive or pretextual in the way that they're working it?
It's not really preemptive because, just like any lawsuit, you typically usually have to have some sort of harm prior to, or some sort of case or controversy. It could potentially be, and that's, why at least we're trying to file a civil injunction that we're working on in this case to say, hey, listen, no, this had to go before FDAX before it could be before law enforcement.
Danny, I'm
Like an
wondering how
immunity.
You would think FDAX would be so pissed at what happened to you guys, man. Because I mean, I understand they're not saying anything, and I understand even if they were in control, they probably wouldn't have done the right thing. But just the idea that they're like almost like relinquishing control, like relinquishing the ability to enforce the statutes and the laws that they have, right? And they don't care.
Well, I definitely
Well,
think
that's
it's
what I
something.
signed up for. I mean, go ahead, Mike.
It's definitely something our Commissioner of Agriculture supports. And I know Holly, in conversations with her, when these types of situations happened with cultivation facilities and stuff, when they were in office, she would call up law enforcement and say, hey, listen, these guys are selling hemp. We'll deal with this, etc. And that's not what's happening right now. And go ahead, Danny.
Okay, so it's my understanding too that there's more scenarios of people getting arrested for possessing hemp, not even selling. It's just in possession of hemp, right?
Yeah.
Can you like elaborate on that and
Yep.
and where FDAX is on that?
FDAX doesn't touch it. I mean, from my perspective, there's absolutely no communication between any law enforcement agency and FDAX. If FDAX pulls you over and you say that you have hemp and it tests positive on their test results, they're arresting. They don't care about anything else. They don't contact the Florida Department of Agriculture. They don't do anything. They just arrest. And I had a judge in Manatee County said, a guy with a hemp license, and he says, well, they're charging him under the Controlled Substance Act 893.13, so the hemp statute is irrelevant. Like, what? How's that even possible? If it's not even a controlled substance, because, and this is the other thing they don't understand, hemp is not a controlled substance. It's removed from the Controlled Substance Act.
Correct.
Now, Danny, you were going to say something before, but I wanted to hear what she had to say.
I got high. I forgot.
It works for me. Now, Shire Tees is also one of the champions of the hemp industry here in the state of Florida, who's also been to Tallahassee, so much that she practically has a room there. Has been concerned to ask, wanting to find out if we're supporting the hemp industry or the cannabis industry. And I basically think at this point in time there is actually room for all. Right. Out of the 22 million people who live in the state of Florida, 23 now. And all the people who come to the state of Florida, which is 120 million tourists who don't have reciprocity, so they have to go to the smoke shops. They can't go to the MTC. That there is room for all. What do you think?
No, there definitely is, and I believe that what we have to do is create, when we move towards legalization, is the ability for some of these hemp companies or all of these hemp companies to be able to get licenses. I really do. I think that that's the only way we can fill space. And honestly, I don't think legalization is going to pass if they don't have some sort of an agreement like this, where actually these hemp companies can start selling this stuff. We've proven in this state and in this country with the hemp experiment that it's one plant, number one. We're talking about one plant. And that was the best name that's no longer in Florida, right? When we're dealing with this fight, it's one plant. And it really has to be legalized. It has to be, regulated in a manner on all sides that provides for safety, which we've seen in the hemp industry. All this crap that these products are dangerous and stuff like that is absolutely ridiculous. And, it's proven. And the kid stuff, like, come on. We know the statistics on that. There's way more kids still drinking bleach under your sink than are accidentally ingesting cannabis. And my position is that's a parental issue. That's not a child issue, especially when those kids are doing it or under 7, right? So, these things are just ridiculous. The lies continue to be spread throughout our legislature, and we need people in power who can educate people who understand this plant and that can proliferate it. This is a huge business. It's a plant. Number one, this is a plant that grows out of the ground. For me, this is a human rights violation. This should be an inalienable right that we should all have to be able to grow and use a plant that we want. So there's so many problems with this, but we really have to bring these industries together. We have to allow operators to sell cannabis on the hemp side, cultivators to get in. No problem. It would be so much better for this entire industry in the state of Florida.
I mean, will that ever happen? I mean, I don't know if we went too far, where we're at right now. I think even going back to DeSantis vetoing that bill, and then in return, wanting the smoke shops to vote against, legalizing marijuana, you see? So that was the big headline back then. So it was false security, I think, for everyone, by him vetoing it. I wouldn't have been selling it. I would have never got raided. I would have never thought that I could keep selling what I was selling in my store that I got raided for. If he didn't veto that bill, I would have took everything out October 1st, 2024. So the clarity is not there. I don't care if you're reading a statute or if you're reading something on FDAX, and that's a big issue. But back to us coming together, I don't know if we're too far, past that point, and I would like to see that. I started out that way. I've done multiple events, and multiple cannabis companies here in Tampa can say they've been at my events. It used to be that way, but somehow I seen that separation happen, and a lot of things started changing over the last, 4 or 5 years. I seen that separation, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how this, I feel like we're going to lose hemp before we can pull it together, to be
Well,
honest.
I think that if we did legalization and actually did it right, and be honest with you, the good folks over at Smart and Safe Florida, I don't see their amendment as doing it right, because of the fact that it does hand the entire industry back over to the MMTCs as being the only ones who are allowed to do it. And Carlos, you have said this many, many times. When you started at Chillum, you never intended it to stay strictly a CBD store. You want it to evolve into something bigger, correct?
Correct. The whole idea was to position myself in such a way that when I could be licensed as a dispensary, it was almost as easy as just putting a new product on the shelf. You know what I mean?
Correct.
I'm gathering contact information for people that are, emails and phone numbers of people, leads, if you will, of people who are pro cannabis.
That's right.
So, I don't want to own a hemp dispensary my entire life. I do want to evolve into a cannabis, full-on cannabis company. And I understand the whole idea that Smart and Safe is, really only for those companies that are, already licensed, and, but is it always going to be that way? Should we not
Right.
make any progress?
Right.
In the meantime, you know what I mean?
And you got to remember, I mean, without smoke shops in this in this nation, in this country, we wouldn't be where we're at now.
Yeah.
People forget that. So let's stop forgetting where our roots are, where we came from. And what's happening is it's corporate. It's corporate meets culture. That's where we're at.
The whole point of suppressing speech in smoke shops, not being able to say things like bong or cannabis inside the store, was to suppress activism that was going on in smoke shops. In the Ashbury district in San Francisco, there were a number of shops that were head shops that were distributing information for activism purposes. And that's probably one of the reasons why that state in particular made such progress in the legalization movement. So our shops are important, but my dream has always been to own a weed dispensary.
Me too.
Yep. Yeah, and I think everyone should have the opportunity to at this point. Our system here in the state doesn't provide great availability for patients, doesn't provide access to patients. Our 2.5 ounce limit is based on a barber's opinion, as to what medical patients should get. It's really disgusting how patients should have been treated for a plant. I do think that we need to pass legalization because, the trickle-down effect is extremely important that I don't think people recognize. When we passed medical, right, it made it so much easier to get charges reduced, to, get people who get arrested, reduce charges. They weren't as strict. And I think the same thing is going to happen when we move towards legalization. Is our system broken? Is our system problematic? Absolutely. And it started this way. And I remember Dan Rogers and I, back in 2014, when that farm bill, the original bill, was going through, and we were like, someone's got to sue now. Like in 2014, and no one did until 2017 because people wanted to get that license, right? So the people who are in want to stay in and want to keep people out. The people who are out want to get in. And the bottom line is we're dealing with a plant that everyone should be able to grow and everyone should be able to use. It shouldn't be traded like cattle. It should be free for everyone everywhere else. You know, in Michigan, they call it's basically the race to the bottom with these cannabis companies. You know, how fast can we get our flower to as cheap as possible? And you know, with horizontal integration here, even if we just started integrating that with allowing all the hemp dispensaries and stores throughout the state, obviously there'd be zoning issues and things of that nature, but allow them first shop to become, you know, the new horizontally integrated stores throughout the state. So these states can, you know, wholesalers can send out, and then we integrate the cultivation facilities and the manufacturing facilities in the state and really build it. The MMTCs that are here will already have their space, and they already have such a head start, you know, that these people will just be able to be the small mom and pops and businesses that are striving in so many other states that need to happen here. And I think it'll be good for the entire industry because it brings the industry together, and that's what the most important thing is.
And there really isn't a better group of people than hemp dispensary owners to get dispensary licenses. Think about it. I
Look
mean,
at us. I mean, come on.
You guys are OGs.
There you go.
We
Perfect.
should be selling weed.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I mean we have spent. I've Jones since 2017, myself since 2018. We've been treating people with cannabinoids.
That's correct.
We've been treating people with cannabinoids for a long time now. You know, whether or not it was from cannabis or, you know, we have had people in our stores asking us questions, wondering about their ailments, right? And we've been training our staff to do so too. And you know, I know that you've been having these issues with the police, but I mean, have you ever had an issue with a customer getting sick? Or
I've never had a customer get sick.
Neither have I.
And back to like you said, I mean, educational wise, like that's what we provide. I'm sure you guys provide the same thing. That's what they're not getting at the dispensary when they walk in. Education, you know, and that's why we're here today with the raid. It's not uneducated. It's or undereducated. It's that they're uneducated. Yeah. No one knows what the hell is going on, you know, and it's sad because hemp is legal and Florida needs to recognize it.
Well, one quick question I have for you, Danny, and that is, what were you, and Mike, you can tell me if you can answer this question or not. What were you doing to protect yourself and your customers from doing anything illegal prior to the raid, where this became such a out of the blue thing? This is why this is happening, kind of thing. What were you doing to take care of the customers as far as the quality and potency and safety of your products?
Everything that I was supposed to do by FDAC standards. That's what I was doing. So to answer your question, we were, you know, we had all the farmers and people we dealt with, they had to have COAs. They had to be a reputable company. The COAs also include, you know, different cannabinoid testing and moisture levels, you know, contaminations, you know, if it has lead and different things like that. So I know that a lot of times the marijuana industry pushes against us saying, oh, they don't do testing. They just don't, you know, this and that. Yeah. And the reality is that we're doing more testing than they are, you know? So I think, I think it's just, it's become a stigma, and, you know, and we've been fighting it for a while. I'm sure Carlos hears stuff all the time, like, oh, that's gotta be, you know, and whatever. And, you know, but you know, to each their own, but yeah, to protect our customers, we definitely, and obviously we're licensed, you know, and we have a scale license also, and you know, everything that, you know, and the way that we do everything is the proper way. So protecting our customers is probably one of the number one things that we provide besides the customer service.
You know,
and also picking some of the best glass out to sell.
Yes, he does.
There are a lot of companies that do the wrong thing, and they're paraded in front of the legislator whenever these hemp bills come up. The Skittles packaging, of course, is a thing, and I hear about legislators going into gas stations when they're driving up to Tallahassee and they're just seeing hemp behind the counter, and oh my god. But I mean, the truth is that like stores like mine, Danny's, even Shy, Siesta G, we take this shit very seriously. We understand the scrutiny that we're under, right? We understand that COAs need to, our shit is all labeled properly. Everything has a QR code. There's there's information on my wall right now on what these different things are. You know what I mean? Like, we if we're not held to the standard of FDAX, there are players in this game, and especially players with hemp licenses from FDAX, that go above and beyond.
Yeah, Carlos, and that's 95%, I think. One of the biggest things that we did during COVID, we set up a lot of these CBD hemp companies and stuff, because people who are caring, people who wanted to be able to help people. And this was a way to do it, because they couldn't get into the cannabis space. So, everybody that I've met, and there's very far and few between, there's a couple of companies that support those child life packaging, which honestly are all trademark infringements anyway. Like, it's illegal anyway. It's whether or not it's just so stupid, because what they're doing is already trademark infringement. They could get a letter anytime. I've had clients get letters from Reese's about their packaging and stuff, so it's just ridiculous. And we need to make sure that law enforcement, again, it's law enforcement education. I've done public records requests to law enforcement throughout this state, asking about their training policies and procedures in hemp. You know how much information I've gotten back? Zero. They have nothing. They just like, yeah, there's hemp in the state now, but they don't actually know what that is. In the FDAX report to law enforcement, which I think is that they did years ago, literally talks about one of the first cases in the state. And I remember talking to the guy. He drove 900 pounds of hemp into the state. It tested hot. Did they arrest him? No. They confiscated it. Like, you can't have this. This is hot hemp. That's it. Imagine what happened to that guy if law enforcement, the guy would have been in jail for at least a couple days with trafficking. He would have been punishable by life imprisonment. And FDAX didn't refer him to law enforcement then. And that's 900 pounds. And the craziest and the most hilarious thing in this case, and we were part of that case as well, the UAB case, where we got the United States Postal Service to acknowledge what needed to be done, put in a box in order for it to be shipped throughout the country, right? So what Danny is charged with is a box that he received that has all the information that is required by the United States Postal Service in the box, with a letter from the United States Postal Service saying, hey, we took this out of shipment because we think it may have been illegal, but it's fine. So we're forwarding it on to you. And that's what he is being charged with, as shipment into the state of an illegal substance that USPS, the postal inspector, confirmed that it has already been established that this is the paperwork that needs to be in it to prove that it's legal. That's what he's being charged with.
All right, so
Shit up. You can't make this shit up.
a federal agency, and federal law always usurps state and local law, has an agency of the federal government has stated that product was legal, and yet when it got in Danny's hands, they came and they grabbed it away, saying we don't think so.
Yeah, and again, you all have to remember your test results mean absolutely diddly squat to them. It does not matter. They're irrelevant to them. They do not care what they say.
All right, so we've heard a lot from the perspective of store owners. I want to take a moment and ask fucking AI camera. I want to take a moment real quick.
Yeah, you're front and center, Carlos. You should be, like you should be. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Mike. All right, so say I'm visiting from Colorado, or I'm visiting from, I got my med card in some other state. I need cannabinoids in order for medicine, and I can't go to the dispensary. I've heard about these hemp shops, right? I go shop at one, right? what products are safe for me to buy, and how should I handle these products after I buy them?
That's a good question. It's really difficult, because I don't trust their testing mechanism, right? So if they have a fundamental roadside test that if you have Delta 8, it can test hot. If you have any product that may have more THC than CBD in it, it can test hot. You're really screwed. And I don't even know what they do with edibles. They test them on the roadside or not. And I have Florida Department of Agriculture, this is a great one, saying like THCA in edibles also has to comply with the formula because people can take the edibles home and heat them and convert the THCA into Delta 9. Realize we live in a state where there's no limit on the amount of Delta 9 you can have in a product, right? So, I mean, the stupidity of what's going on is just ridiculous. So honestly, I mean, just continue. The best defense in any of these, it's like, it's hemp. I bought it as hemp, and let the state attorney's office prove otherwise, regardless of what you have. But there's really no clear protections, unfortunately, that I can tell anyone because, the old test that the Tampa Police Department was using, oregano tested hot. So who knows?
So, is there any amnesty for somebody who buys a product in a hemp shop and gets pulled over for, say, for instance, a tag light being out or there being somebody brown inside the car? And they see packaging that doesn't look like this and isn't sealed in their car, and they actually smell something which smells similar to a terpene. If it's from True Leaf, probably not. But the fact is, what happens to a person who comes here on vacation? Do they leave on probation?
Well, it depends on who they get for an attorney, but
Any recommendations?
just one. No, unfortunately, we're playing Russian roulette with that, because again, it depends on the officer on the side of the road. It depends on, what testing kit that they're using now, because it seems like this mobile detect is better than the NIC2, including the mobile detect company, right? So which one are they using? Are they using it correctly? Is it expired? Has the test been in their car the whole time? So it's been exposed to heat, which can cause, it to change the results of the test. So these are all things that are problems. And unfortunately, what law enforcement is doing is they are arresting first, then they're sending it to the lab, right? As opposed to what they should be doing is maybe potentially confiscating these materials, sending them to the lab, and then deciding to potentially arrest on it. So, hopefully we can continue to push so that odor of cannabis at all is not reason to search. Burnt odor, maybe, because then they can say, well, you're smoking and driving, DUI is still illegal. But we really got to get to the point where the odor of fresh cannabis alone cannot be probable cause to search. And I think we're getting closer and closer to there every day. And it depends on it depends on where you live in this state, as to whether or not odor is or is not probable cause currently.
Now we got to wrap this up, but I want to state the impact of all of this.
Wait, hold on, Gary. Hold on. That sounds important.
It is.
I have one more question, and
it's yours.
It's a question for Mike, and it's a question that I've asked him way too many times. But I think it's important that I ask him again on the show. Mike, THCA in the state of Florida, is it illegal or illegal? Or is it legal or illegal?
So that becomes a very interesting question, right? My position is it should be legal, right? Maybe if it's not compliant to sell in the state of Florida, but that shouldn't make it an illegal product. I do believe THCA should be a federally legal hemp product, which then thereby makes it not a controlled substance.
Interesting that they do sell pre-rolls in Michigan that are dusted with THCA diamonds, as they call them. They call it snow capping over there, so that the top of your pre-roll, the top inch is white, but they're using a legal product. I guess my concern was, I was mentioning before, is that this is not, as much as we all love Chillum and Smokey Jones as being fantastic pieces of our industry, there are tens of thousands of other smoke shops higher up and insane and all the other ones that rely on this staying legal for them because they can't get into that legal cannabis industry yet. We don't have the horizontal integration that would allow people to get into this industry. So this is the way in. So what is going to happen at this point in time is what I guess our biggest concern is. I mean, are we going to shut down 10,000 smoke shops and impact hundreds of thousands of employees? And for Carlos and for Danny, I mean, this shop is not just a place to go to when you're finished having breakfast in the morning. It is their livelihood. It is their life. It is how they pay their rent or their mortgage. And so I have to ask you, Danny, at this point in time, what are you doing now? You are still open, correct?
Yeah, we are still open. Interesting. I mean, we have 2 shops, one in East Tampa as well. So that one we never had an issue with that. And we had, follow everything with FDAX. We've had multiple inspections. But following it up, I mean, since the raid, to be honest with you, I've just been educating myself, my employees, my customers. My employees are scared to death, so I have them, doing their own research. I want them to understand and not just listen to what I'm telling them, but the thing is that when you start researching and you're trying to figure things out, it's hidden in so many different places and it's not in layman terms. So no one understands what's going on. So when you read the Florida statutes and what, total Delta 9 is, and you read a COA and it says Delta 9 on it, and you look over and you see how much total Delta 9 is in it, that's going to be what total Delta 9 means, so that's the issue here. It's not there again, it's not undereducated. It's they just don't know what's going on.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with amendment. Well, it's not an amendment yet, but the current petition for legalization, which they're already trying to find ways to shut it down right now. They actually arrested one of the petitioners for 135 illegal petitions. I don't know whether they put down Mickey Mouse or they said he stole personal information, but they're trying to find ways to shut down all the petitions that have already been turned in, so that it doesn't even get to the Supreme Court. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But what I guess my biggest thing is, if your court case goes through, and Mikey, hopefully you can answer this. If you win, and I'm saying, I'd love to say when you win, but I know.
Yes. No, we got to manifest, Gary.
When you win,
that's right.
What impact is this going to have for the hemp industry? Will they be able to sleep well at night?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be able to at least, let everyone know what's going on. Like, have a clear understanding. And that's the one thing that I don't like regarding how FDAX has dealt with THCA, right? Simpson had no problem blowing up the packaging issue. They have no problem, coming out and said that 07 is illegal. Why have they not come out specifically regarding the THCA issue and stuff like that to people on alert? Why are they not allowing these companies to ship it back to the manufacturers, as opposed to having to eat it or destroy it? Why do they want to destroy the businesses that are giving them the $650 a year to support this industry? I just don't understand those types of things. So, we're going to continue to have this problem. But this will create a clear legal precedent either way, what is or is not legal in this state and what companies can do. And that's the goal. And really, again, my position is the Florida Commission of Agriculture should be standing up and saying, hey, let's deal with this. This is my industry. We regulate this industry. Right. I'm going to police these companies like we're supposed to. If we need your help, we'll ask. Otherwise, leave them alone.
So I guess it comes down to who's in charge. I mean, obviously things changed dramatically from Nikki Fried's tenureship in the Department of Agriculture to Wilton Simpson's. In part, just the fact that the whole hemp page was disappeared from the FDAX website shows you exactly where their mindset was at. So, and as far as the governorship is concerned, well, to all the good folks in the hemp lobby who put a lot of money into pushing for that veto, I think that veto is a way of playing you. Be honest with you, you can see it in the way that he even wrote his response letter saying, yeah, I'm going to veto this, but this is what I want changed, A, B, C, D, E. And it was all about making certain that Amendment 3 failed in the long run. So we need to have a government. We need to have a change in the governor's mansion. I think we need to have a definite change in the Department of Agriculture commissionership. And that's where it comes down to what you guys can do. There's a big nexus between the politicians and the policy. So it's very, very important that if you want to change policy, change the politicians that are in charge of it. That's why it's so important to vote for the right people. Now, we don't know exactly who's running for the Department of Agriculture yet. As far as this next election is concerned, we have until April to finish qualifying. But be mindful of who's running and be mindful of where they're at. Choose your issues and look at not what they say, but what they do.
Mike,
and that's my soapbox for this.
Mike, you running for any public office soon?
I don't know about that one.
Hey, Department of Agriculture, dude. You obviously
You got our vote. I know that, right, Carlos?
We need vote and money.
There you
All
go.
right. So, Danny, if anybody wants to contact you, ask you questions like, I want to start up a smoke shop. Am I fucked up or what? How do they get a hold of you?
Come in the store. I mean, that. But no, we have 2 stores. Like I said, 4035 West Hillsborough Avenue. That's going to be our mothership. We also have 5406 North 56th Street. That's over in East Tampa by the casino. My email is the best way. I always tell people, don't call me. I'm always really busy, but if you email, I check it all day long, every 5-10 minutes, like it's a phone call. I check it. So that's going to be the Smokey Jones at Gmail. TheSmokeyJones at Gmail. The Smokey Jones at Gmail.
And if by chance the man sees that your tag light is out and pulls you over and you need a decent defense lawyer, Mike, how do they get a hold of you?
You said decent, so I don't know who they'd call.
The man.
the best attorney in the state
it.
of Florida.
You got it right. Let's go.
You got Minority Law. You guys can get in touch with me, Michael at minoritylaw.com. Hit up my office, 813-995-8227. And come out and see us at events and things like that throughout the state. We're always trying to get out there and educate and make sure people are protected in this space and all others. You know, this is inhumane, and this is now a human rights violation for cannabis and hemp to be criminalized in any state in this country.
And also remember, Minority he specializes not only in hemp, but cannabis as well. So if you're watching and you need a lawyer, you get pulled over, it doesn't matter. Always say it's hemp because it all is hemp. Unless it tests positive over 0.3% Delta 9. So when you guys are traveling, it's always CBD, it's always hemp. Let them make that determination.
Let them make that determination and make them prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you knew it wasn't hemp. That's the most important thing that I think would be difficult for them to do.
And I'm going to tell you this now, but if anybody asks you, I didn't say it. Always keep a hemp tube in your car. So if anybody pulls you over, you say, "This is what I have," and this is exactly what you'll find out if you test it or when you test it. Yada yada yada. So there.
And the receipt. We always tell the customer, take the receipt with them. So everything that's bought in our store, it's tracked. It's all in the inventory. I can pull it up. I can show you your last purchase, everything like that. Everything that was brought in our store went through that register that went out the front door. So, yeah.
So skip the trapper, head to Smokey Jones.
You got it, brother. Thanks, Gary.
You and Carlos have some of the best glass in the country. I really do think so.
Thank you.
And with that, guys, here's another week. So stay strong. Guys, Godspeed in everything you do. You are the tip of the spear for an industry which affects so many people in the state of Florida. Until we get it right, we got you guys. If that makes any sense. Peace out, guys.